All right, today is October 12th. It's just a little after 1 o'clock Eastern time, and this is our Greek studies meeting. So we're going to spend some time today looking at Greek reading. And also, I'd like to introduce you to the first lesson of the new Greek vocabulary course. I talked about it last week, but it's actually available for you to start if you want to today. So I'll walk you through that first lesson and let you see what that looks like. Some of you are already studying. Do me a favor real quick and just let me know if you're studying Greek reading. If you're studying Greek reading, write in the chat what lesson you're on. Just let me know what lesson you're on. Is everybody on lesson 1 just getting started? Because Greek is, we're just starting to get moving with Greek. Is everybody in lesson 1? Because if everyone's in lesson 1, I'm going to talk about lesson 1. If not, I'm going to talk about lesson 2. Looks like everybody's in lesson 1. So what I'm going to do then is just talk about lesson 1. Okay, good to know that. So it's kind of cool that you're all in the same place because we can go through these things together. But remember, what I'm expecting from you is that you're studying the online course, moving through it as quickly as you can individually, or as slowly as you need to individually. It doesn't matter. And these weekly meetings, they're really to help you. So, I don't want you to come to these meetings and think you're sitting in a class or that I'm taking attendance. These meetings are to help you. So if there are questions you have, if there's stuff you're just curious about, if there's something in the lesson that you come across that you don't understand or would like to ask about, feel free to come to these meetings with those questions. I'll always have a little bit of talk or sometimes a lot of talk prepared, but they're open to questions, and I don't have a set amount of material that I need to get through during these meetings. So if we stop to answer questions or talk about something, that's fine. It's just meant to be helpful to you. And I want you to always remember to focus on the online courses. Make sure you're getting tasks complete. Make sure you're taking quizzes, submitting assignments, doing that work, because that work that gets recorded, that's your real work in these courses. So this live class stuff is meant to be helpful, and it also can be used to count as an hour of instructional time, which is good. So think about it. If we have these meetings every week and we have an hour of Greek study meeting each week, over 30 or 35 weeks of the school year, you'd have 30 hours of instructional time for Greek, which is good. So we can talk about all that kind of stuff as you get older into high school years, but I want you to understand that these meetings are really for you to help you understand and make progress in your online courses, okay? So focus on the online courses, bring all your questions to these meetings, and we'll work together through these courses. Try to get through them as easily as we can, all right? So today, let me let one more student in. Today, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at lesson 1 of Greek reading together. I was actually preparing to look at lesson 2, but if everybody's in lesson 1, we'll stay there. So that's okay. So I've got lesson 1 up on the screen. Give me a wave if you can see lesson 1 on your screen. Good, okay? And I'll make the text a little bigger. All right. So what I'd like to do today, if you're studying this, what you should be doing to study this is working on translation exercises. That should really be the focus of your study when you're working in Latin reading or Greek reading. You should be doing translation exercises every day. And sometimes kids fuss about translation exercises because their hands get tired copying stuff out and all that. It's the best way to do it. And the other ways to do it are even worse. So take my advice and practice the translation exercises, because sitting and trying to memorize words without writing is even more difficult. Just use the translation exercises, keep doing them over and over again until you don't need to look up any of the words. If it takes you, if you can do it in 1 hour, great. If it takes you 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. Over time, you'll get faster and faster. So don't worry about speed when you go through these lessons. Just worry about mastering the lessons because you'll get faster and faster as you go along. It's like if any of you have ever had piano lessons, if you have a good teacher, the teacher will tell you to take your time and do everything perfect. And then over time, you'll get faster. You don't have to worry about doing things fast. If you do them well, you'll get faster naturally over time. So do the translation exercises. It doesn't matter if it takes a lot of time. I'll explain to your parents that just because it takes time doesn't mean there's something wrong. You need to focus on accuracy when you're getting started, and you'll get faster and faster as time goes on. So focus on the translation exercises and don't try to skip them. Don't try to do it just once and turn it in. You just won't be able to learn the vocabulary. So that's what you should be focused on. So what I'd like to do is just walk through these, and I'll quiz you a little bit, and we'll talk about some of the details. And like I said, feel free to ask any questions, because I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you struggle with individually, or if something's not clear. And sometimes you may see something that's not clear or have a question, and other students have the same question. They're just afraid to ask it for some reason. So it can be helpful to everybody. And sometimes, you might ask a question and it actually be an important issue, and you don't even really understand what you're asking, and I can understand as a teacher. So don't be afraid to ask, okay? All right, so verse 1 here, we've gone through this, I think, but it's good just to continue to review it. You have to be learning to read. Let me ask you this. How many of you have studied the videos and are able to read Greek words? How many of you are comfortable or getting comfortable reading Greek words? And don't lie, because it's not going to be helpful. I wouldn't say perfectly, but like when you look at this screen and see these Greek words, can you figure out what they say? Or is it just, it might as well be Chinese? So it takes time getting comfortable. All right. So the reason why I'm asking is because I don't want to get ahead of you and start talking about things that you're not comfortable with. Okay. So let's just practice a little bit, and I'll quiz you some so you can Zoriana says she can't. Some say they're getting comfortable. Some say they are able to read. All right, good. So that's the first thing, obviously. That's like the gate you have to get through in order to get started. So there's no use trying to run if we can't walk yet. All right, so let's just practice this. Let's take some time to practice here. And what I'd like you to do, I could have like students talk and open their microphone, but it takes too much time. And I have classes of my own where I'm a student, and I get annoyed sometimes by students talking during the class, and you've got this whole group of students, and there's one person talk. So I don't want to do that. What I think is better is if I ask you some questions and you just think about the answer, and then I'll tell you the answer, and you can test for yourself if you're right or wrong. And sometimes I'll ask you just to type an answer in the chat, but I think it's better to just think of the answer and then, learn if you're right or wrong when I tell you the answer. So let's practice together a little bit, okay? So here in verse 1, here in the first verse, let me ask you one more question before we begin. Sorry. How many of you are also studying Latin reading? How many of you are also studying Latin reading? Good. So you're all in Latin. So most of you or all of you are in Latin reading. Good. That makes it a lot easier. How many of you have already completed lesson 1 in Latin reading? So you already know John 1 through 5. Good, 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 good. Okay, so the content of this, the reason I'm asking is because the content of this lesson is simple for you then. You just have to learn to read it in Greek, right? So that's good to know. Okay. So let's go ahead and walk through this. Verse 1 here, read this phrase to yourself. Read this phrase to yourself. I'll give you a minute, and then I'll read it. And if there's anything in there that you don't understand, you can ask me. So read that first phrase that I have highlighted, and then I'll read it, and you can see how you would have done. That first phrase reads, en, first word is en arche, ein, ho, logos. En arche, ein, ho, logos. How many of you have that Perfect. How many of you have that perfect? Very comfortable with that? En arche ein hologos. Okay. Who can tell me what this little mark is under the eta? Look at the eta. What's that little mark under there? Lara says iota, iota, iota subscript. Very good, very good. How do we read that mark? How do we read that mark? How do we read that little mark under the eta? You don't. Very good, Serena. I don't know if it's pronounced Serena or Serena. It doesn't make any sound. Very good. Okay. How about this squiggly mark above the eta? What's that squiggly thing above the eta? And don't say tilde. That's not what I'm asking you. What is that squiggly mark above the eta? What is that? It's an accent mark. That's right. What kind of accent mark? You can either tell me the name of the accent or you can tell me how it's to be read. How do we read that mark, that squiggly accent mark? How do we read that? It's circumflex. Very good, Giovanni. That's the name of it. But how do we read it? What does that accent mark tell us to do? What does it tell us to do? Up and down. Very good. Okay. Pay attention. Yeah, good, Serena. That's right. Rise and fall. So when we read that, we rise and fall. We accent and come down on that same vowel. So that takes a little bit of practice. So that word is read arche, arche. And you can hear how I go up and down on that last vowel. Arche, arche. And we see the same thing on this next vowel, this eta. Now, this eta has the squiggly accent above it, the circumflex accent, but it also has another mark underneath the accent mark. What is that mark underneath the accent mark? What is that? No breathing. Very good. So you can call it a breathing mark, but what it actually means is there's no breathing, right? There's no breathing. All right. How do you know that there's no breathing? How do you identify that mark as the mark that shows no breathing? How do you know that that mark is a mark that says not to breathe? How do you know that? How do you identify? It's a backward C. Very good. Very good. It's like a backward C. Good. Okay. So if the mark is shaped like a backward C, that means no breath. If it's shaped like a C, pointing in the direction of a C, that's a breathing mark. Okay, good. So this first word is en arche ein. How do we pronounce this word? Spell it for me. How should I read that word? Everyone's writing ho. Good. Where did that H come from? Where did that H come from? The breathing mark. Very good. Very good. Rough breathing. Very good. Breathing mark. What's another name for breathing that starts with an A? Who knows? What's another name for breathing that starts with an A? Aspiration. Victor got it. Good. Good, Cecilia. Just so you know, it's spelled with an I, like Serena spelled it there. Good. Okay, good. So there we have ho. We have the Omicron with the rough breathing, and we read it as ho. Okay, let's practice with a little bit of letter identification here. What letter is this? What letter is that I have highlighted there? Okay, good. Good, I see good answers coming in. How is that pronounced? Who can explain how that letter is pronounced? Nope, nope, nope. Nope, not like a hard K, not like a C, not like she. Giovanni got it there. Serena, I think she got it. Now let me ask you, Serena wrote CH, okay? So that's the letter chi or key. Serena wrote CH. Does that mean like CH in church? Does that mean like CH in church? Give me an English word that uses CH the way that should be pronounced. Very good. Chorus, good. Okay. Christmas, very good. Don't start making us think about Christmas. Let's use chorus so we don't get distracted. Character, good. Choir, good. Okay, those are all good. Okay, so that's the letter key, and it's pronounced like the CH in chorus or character or choir. Good. All right, what's this letter here? This second letter in the first word. What letter is that? What letter is that? The second letter of the first word. That's the letter nu. That's the letter nu. It looks like a V. That's one of the letters that I told you is tricky when you're getting started with Greek. It looks like a V. It takes some practice to remember that's not a V. It's a nu. And it's pronounced like the letter N. Okay, good. How about this letter here? What letter is that? Rho. Very good. Okay, rho. How is that pronounced? How is the letter rho pronounced? I'm guessing by double and triple R, you mean trilled R, right? If that's what you meant, that's right. Good. Now, just so you know, some students have a hard time making that trill sound. You know, it depends on like the shape of your tongue and your mouth. Sometimes it's hard to make that. If you can't make that sound, don't torment yourself. Just say R, okay? But to be more perfect, it's like a Spanish R, like R. I can't hold it. Some people can actually make that trill sound and hold it. I can't do that, but I can make the sound to pronounce the letter. Okay, like perro. Good, you got that trilled R sound in Spanish. Good. All right, very good. Let's look at another letter. How about this? First letter in that fifth word. First letter in that fifth word. Lambda. Make sure you stick a B in there. Yeah, like George wrote it. Lamb. It's got a B in there, like baby sheep. Lambda. Good. All right. And how is that read? How do we read that? Lambda is read how? Like an L. Very good. Good, good, good. Okay, so en arche ein hologos. Very good. En arche ein hologos. Let's try the next phrase here, the next clause. Take a minute. Take a minute, practice reading that. All right. I'll read it here. You can test yourself. The first word is kai. Kai. The second word is ho. We've already seen that. Then we have logos. We've already seen logos. Ein. Ein. Make sure you get that circumflex accent. Ein. Then we have pros. Pros. Ton. Theon. Theon. Kai hologos ein pros ton theon. How many got that perfect? Zoriana says almost, right? Got that perfect? Good. Victor says a little bit. Victor, what did you have a hard time with? Let me know what you have a hard time with. All right, let's identify some letters here. What is this letter here at the beginning of that fifth word in that phrase? P, good. All right. In English, you'll hear people call it pi, but really the right way to say it is P. Okay. And obviously that's like the English letter P. So that's good. What about this letter here? What is this thing? Looks like a C with a tail. What is that thing? Sigma, good. Okay. So that's called final sigma. There's two different forms of sigma. There's one that's used at the end of words. Very good. There's one that's used at the end of words. And then there's another form of sigma that's used in the middle of words or at the beginning of words. Let's see if I can find one. Here's one right here. You see there, that's a sigma, right? At the beginning of a word. So you've got two different forms of sigma. You've got one at the beginning of words and one at the end of words. And that's a question that I don't know the answer to, why there are two different forms of sigma. That's a good question to try to figure out. I'll give you a challenge on that one. As we're going through Greek grammar, as we're going through our Greek grammar textbook, see if you can find an explanation of why there are two forms of sigma that are used, okay? Obviously, we don't do that for other letters. Why sigma? That's a good question. All right, so we've got kai ho logos ein pros ton theon. Theon. So let me ask you this. Here at the end of this word kai, what's that mark above the iota? No, Zoriana, they don't sound different. What's this mark above the iota in kai? Notice the direction it's pointing, right? Let me ask you this. I see two different answers. The word acute, does anybody know what acute means? How many of you have studied geometry and learned what an acute angle is? What does acute mean? You say less than 90. Who can give me a good description for what acute means? Small, short, no, that's not a good definition. Who can give me a good not definition, just a description? Henry has it there. Look at Henry's answer. It's sharp. Okay, so the idea of acute means sharp. So when we have an acute accent, think of it as a sharp accent. So we're going to go up, right? Go up. If any of you study music, you know what a sharp sign means. It means that you go up a step, right? So a sharp accent or acute accent means we're going to rise. But here on the word kai, we see the direction of the accent mark is pointing down. So it's a grave accent, grave. And grave is not a word we use very often. It's not a word we use very often. You can think of it, though, if you take music lessons, you can think of it as a flat. All right. So think of them as sharp and flat. That's a good way to think of it. Okay. So if you see the accent mark pointing downward, we're going to sort of take a little bit off that syllable. All right. So that's a grave accent mark. And then look at the omicron here. What do we see above the omicron? What do we see above the omicron? What do we see there above the omicron? Who can tell me what we see? That's an acute accent. Okay, notice it's pointing up like a sharp. That's an acute accent. So when we read that word logos, 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 we want to make sure we give it that acute accent, okay? And then we have the word ein again, which we've seen, and we have two marks above that eta, two marks. We've got a circumflex accent, which means we go up and down. Yeah, Giovanni, that's good. You can think of grave as going down into the grave. That's a easy way to think of it. And we've got here on this word ein, a circumflex accent and a soft or no breathing mark. Okay, very good, Giovanni. Okay, that's good. Any questions so far? We've gone through those two phrases. It seems like you're pretty comfortable with that. I don't see many wrong answers. I don't see much confusion. Any questions in those first two phrases before we go on? Anything you don't recognize? Or you can just write easy and I'll know we can go on here. If that's easy, just let me know. Easy, easy, easy. Good. All right, good. Okay, so next phrase, the last part of verse 1. We have this phrase here. Try to read that. Should be easier because we've seen all of these words. Giovanni, I'll answer that in a minute. Let's take a minute and read this last phrase to yourself. Should be easy because we've already seen all this stuff. Okay, this last phrase, the first word is kai, kai. Then we have theos, theos. Then ein, ho, logos, logos. And if you're comfortable with the reading, start practicing reading the accents carefully and things like that. Okay, so it's like step 1 is just recognize the letter and think of the letter sounds. Step 2 is read the words. And then step 3 is begin practicing accent and get the whole reading correct, okay? Giovanni asked the question before about iota subscript. So we see this little iota subscript. We see this at the end of words. The reason why that's written is because in older Greek languages that are no longer used, there was actually a iota at the end of that word. But over time in Greek, they started to drop that iota, and that caused some confusion because that iota actually marks one of the cases in Greek nouns. Okay, so it's important, but it got dropped over time. If you were a Greek speaker, you just sort of knew what it was. But if you're studying to try to learn it, you don't know what it is. So what happened was in the Middle Ages, and this is explained in the grammar textbook. In the Middle Ages, when monks and different people were starting to copy old Greek books, they realized that this was missing, and so they started to write it in under that vowel at the end of the word to help make it clear. Okay, so it's like a note that scribes or copyists added to Greek texts over time. They also added all these accent marks and stuff like that. So if you look at an ancient Greek book or inscription, there's none of this stuff. There's no marks. There's no accent marks and stuff like that. That's all been added. No, if you look at old Greek writing, even this lowercase, the lowercase font that we use in Greek, that wasn't used in ancient Greek. It was just all uppercase letters, no accent marks. You had to know the language in order to read it. All right. You can find inscriptions of Greek, even Greek Bibles, early Greek Bibles, where the whole page is just filled with uppercase letters. There aren't even spaces between words. It's just the letters are just written all uppercase, no accent marks, no breathing marks. The whole page is just filled with letters. Okay. Yeah, pottery. You've seen pottery like that. Yep. Okay, so that's what that little subscript means. I mean, everything that we're looking at here, no one in classical Greece would have seen this. This is all more modern script that's meant to help us learn a language that we're not familiar with, okay? So good question, Giovanni. So it looks like we finished verse 1. Everyone seems pretty comfortable. Let's go on to verse 2. Take a minute and read verse 2 here. Yeah, they're very useful. Good. So read verse 2. This is a challenging first word, so take your time, look at it carefully. Look at that first word carefully and try to figure that first word out. That's a challenging word. So take your time, try to figure out these words. That first word, you see it's got an omicron and an upsilon. Yeah, Henry, that's a good spelling, but how about the accent, right? We've got to get the accent in there. That word is pronounced hutos, hutos, hutos. You've got the diphthong. This is a diphthong, omicron, upsilon. Omicron, upsilon is a diphthong. You've got a rough breathing mark over the upsilon, a rough breathing mark. So you have to add that H, that breath. You have to add the breath, and it's a circumflex accent. Okay. I think if you wanted to, it's kind of hard to think of in English. Maybe the way I just wrote it helps. Hu-u-tos. Hu-u-tos. You see that? Hu-u-tos. Okay. Now let me ask you this. I said, here's a grammar question for you. I said that omicron upsilon is a diphthong. I said that omicron upsilon is a diphthong. What are two ways that I can know that omicron upsilon make a diphthong? What are two ways that I can know? This is a challenging question. What are two ways that I can know that omicron upsilon make a diphthong? Two ways. Two ways. So far I've seen one way. George says the signs are on the second letter. Giovanni's making stuff up here. Archaic Greek inscriptions doesn't have anything to do with it. James Bates says they are together and the marks are at the end. Okay, so I've got three, it looks like I've got three answers that identify one way. What's another way I know that Omicron upsilon is a diphthong? Two ways. One way is that the breathing mark and the accent mark are over the second vowel. That's because those first two vowels are being treated like one vowel together. So you got that. How else can I know? How else can I know that it's a diphthong? How else can I know? Yeah, Giovanni, you're thinking about the vocabulary lesson, not Greek reading. Well, the second way that I can know, which you're going to kick yourself for when I tell you the answer, is you can memorize it in grammar, right? So the second way is you can just learn it in grammar. You can memorize the diphthongs and know what it is. Okay, so the first way I would say is to memorize the diphthongs when you study grammar. That's easy. But there's also a way to know in the reading, and it's that the breathing mark and the accent is put over the second vowel, where normally it would be put over the first vowel. Yeah, I told you you're going to kick yourself, but Lara says she's not going to kick yourself. Well, easy answer. Okay, so there's two ways to know a diphthong. One is to memorize them and to know to look for them. The other is to pay attention to the symbols because they'll show you that something weird's going on. Okay, so that first word is hutos. What does that mean? What does hutos mean? What does hutos mean? Come on, let's move on from the diphthong question. Hutos, what does it mean? Nope, not him. What does hutos mean? Good, Cecilia. It means this. Okay, it's a pronoun that means this. What Latin word did Saint Jerome use to translate hutos? Very good. Hic. Okay, good. So you got that. Okay, good. So we have hutos. That's that first word. That's hard to read. Hutos. Hutos, ein, en. Notice the difference between ein and en. It's good to compare these two words. Here we have eta, nu, and here we have epsilon, nu. Who can explain the difference between eta and epsilon? Who can explain the difference between eta and epsilon? Long and short. Very good. Very good. Okay. Epsilon makes a short E sound. Eta makes a longer E sound. Very good. Okay. Good. So we have ein for the first word with eta, and then we just have en for that second word. And as you read, as you practice reading, like I said, start to practice as you get comfortable with this, start to practice the details, right? Try to get it perfect. So if you see an eta, read it with a little longer time. If you see an epsilon, read it a little quicker. So practice good pronunciation. So we have hutos, ein, en, arche, pros, ton, theon, pros, ton, theon. Okay, hutos, en arche, pros, ton, theon. What does this word pros mean? Pros. What does pros mean? What does pros mean? Pros, it means two, right? James says two. Hutos ein arche pros ton theon. You have to look at the context, right? You have to look at the context. Hic erat and in principio. What's the next word in Latin? In principio. Hic erat in principio. Who knows their Latin? See, this is where you get caught when you don't do your translation exercises. Hic erat in principio apud. Apud in Latin. Apud. What does apud mean? See, if you know Latin, you can use your knowledge of Latin to translate the Greek. Good, with. Good. Pros ton theon. What does this word ton mean? What is ton? What does ton mean? The. So we have hutos ein en arche pros ton theon. This was in the beginning with the God. Now it says the God, because you're all telling me that ton means the. Our English translation doesn't say the. It says this was in the beginning with God. Why do we have with God in English translations if the actual Greek text says with the God? Why don't we have the God? Why do you think? You can sort of take an intelligent guess on that one. Because we believe in one God. Very good. Okay. Because we believe in one God. It wouldn't have made much sense in ancient Greece to say the God, right? It wouldn't make much sense. You would say which God, right? There's many gods. So it wouldn't make much sense. To say the God is pretty significant. Okay. The one and only God. And when we translate it into English, we don't talk like that. We just say God and we mean one God. So we translate it differently. Okay. So good. And remember, the idea that the ancient people had of many gods, it's not really a wrong idea because they were probably thinking of angels or spirits. They knew that they were more powerful than men, and they called them gods, and they worshiped them and had all kinds of teaching about them and stuff like that. And they were wrong about a lot of that stuff. And in Christianity, we don't say there's one God and that's it, and we throw out all these other ideas. We teach that there are angels and spirit, all different kinds of angels, and it's very mysterious. You have to study quite a bit to even learn about angels. We see them in scripture, but we don't really learn much about them. It's very mysterious. So we can see that ancient people might have had experiences with spirits, just like men in the Bible have experiences with spirits, like the Virgin Mary at the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel came to her and spoke to her. We don't know that people in the ancient world may have had experiences with good spirits or bad spirits, and they sort of told stories about those spirits, but just thought of them as gods, as a bunch of different gods, and didn't think of one almighty God who controlled all things. So just because they teach this idea of many gods, some people will say, oh, that stuff is all. It's not necessarily wrong if you understand that they might be trying to describe angels or evil spirits that they may have had experiences with, right? Socrates said that an angel or a spirit used to speak to him and tell him the answers to problems. Homer said that a spirit used to give him knowledge of ancient events. So we have to look at the details. He called them muses. That's right. Okay. They were spirits so they're telling us that spirits are involved in their lives. I don't think it's very smart for us to say, you're all lying. It may very well be true that spirits were involved in their lives, but they called them gods and worshiped them and kind of mistreated them. Oracles they were actually places or temples where supposedly one of the gods or one of these spirits spoke through a certain person, like a prophet, to the people, like the Delphi, like the oracle at Delphi. Good. Okay. You can learn about a lot of that stuff in classical literature when we study Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. So there's lots to talk about. Okay. All right. So we have ton theon, the God, which we translate God. That's why. Okay. How many of you are comfortable with verse 2? Everybody comfortable with verse 2? Any questions before we go? I don't want to go on and lose anybody. Sort of. Except the first word. Yeah, hutos. And another thing I want to warn you about, which we're going to see, is that when you get into all these breathing marks and accents, sometimes you can just say, oh, this is so boring. Like, do we really need to pay that much attention to all these details? The answer is yes, because as we get going, we're going to see that the difference of an accent mark can actually mark two different words that have two different meanings. So they actually are very important. Okay, we can't just ignore them. All right, I'll give you an example. Here's an example of how an accent mark can be important. Look here, you've got the word ha, right? You've got ha, a rough breathing, a rough breathing. Chill out with talk about mythology. We can talk about that later if you want to. Let's keep working on our Greek here. Here you see the word ha in hologos. You see there's a rough breathing mark, no accent. What does that word mean? Ha. What does ha mean? The, very good. The, good, good, good. All right, now go down here, verse 3. Look what we have. We have Omicron with a rough breathing mark, but it also has a grave accent on it. So you have ha up here in hologos, and then we have ha down here with a grave accent, and this is actually a different word. So you can see that those marks, yeah, that's right, Serena, it means which. Okay, so those marks, you can't just ignore them or pretend, why is Mr. Michael wasting my time with all this nonsense? It actually does matter. Okay, it does matter. And we'll see other words like that where it does matter. Okay. So it's not nonsense. So we're through verse 2 into verse 3. Let's read this next phrase. Take a minute, read that. Try to get it perfect. Let's practice reading that first phrase in verse 3. All right, the first word here starts with P, is panta, panta, panta. Then we've got this word here, D, with some kind of wacky mark on it. What is that mark? What is that mark? Is that a breathing mark? Next to D there, is that a breathing mark? Very good, Giovanni. Okay, it's not a breathing mark. It's very good, Cecilia, good. It's not a breath, it's not a breathing mark. It's not a breathing mark. It's an apostrophe that shows that one of the letters was dropped out of that word. And some of you got it right. It's the alpha was dropped. So if you were to look that word up in a dictionary, you wouldn't find it. You'd have to know what the word is. It's dia, okay? Dia. Who can tell me why the alpha in dia is dropped? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Just to make this more difficult or what? Why would they do that? Very good. Very good. Because the next word, very good. The next word begins with the alpha sound. And if we just drop that first alpha there in dia, we can read diautu. Diautu. We can read it as just one word smoothly. Diautu. Ruth says, I am lost. Let me ask you, Ruth, is this your first time with us in this class? Is this your first time with us, Ruth? For this meeting, I mean. Let me know. If you're coming in and this is your first meeting, I would expect you to be lost for a little bit, but my advice is just to relax, pay attention, learn what you can, and after a few meetings, you'll start to get comfortable. It's a different language. It should be difficult, okay? And the fact that these other students are able to read and understand this stuff shows that you will too. And we don't have any geniuses in here. It's not like I collected a bunch of Einsteins out of the world. You just have to study. It just takes some time, okay? Just little by little. So just relax and pay attention to try to pick some things out we talk about, and study Greek reading on your own, the online course, and little by little, if you keep participating in our classes, you'll be just like all the other kids. Okay? All right, so verse 3, we have panta, panta, D, and this is to be read with the next word, diautu, diautu, and then the last word we have egeneto, 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 panta diautu egeneto. Panta diautu egeneto. George, what do you mean when you say you don't get the last word? What does that mean? I don't get what you mean. I don't get the last word. What does that mean? Panta diautu egeneto. Who can tell me something special about these first two vowels in autu? You don't get the pronunciation. It's just all short vowels. It's actually pretty simple. Egeneto, egeneto. They're a diphthong. Good. Okay. Alpha and upsilon are a diphthong, so they're read as one vowel sound. Good. Yeah, this last word is just a bunch of short vowels. Egeneto, egeneto. All right. Panta, what does panta mean? Panta, what does panta mean? What does panta mean? Everything. Very good. Or all, right? Let's say all. All things. It's like omnia in Latin. Now, let me ask you this. In Rome, there's a building. In Rome, there's a building called the Pantheon. Pantheon. That word pantheon is derived from two words in our lesson. What do you think it means? All the gods. Very good. So if you look at that word, you can see those two Greek words that it's derived from, right? Pan, the first part means all, and then theon refers to the gods. So pantheon, that's panta, okay? Temple of all the gods, very good, all right? Victor, what are you trying to say there? Pantheon means graveyard? Were you trying to say graveyard? Did you use a double L to make the yes sound? That's a Y in English. Double L in Spanish makes the Y sound, but you've got to use the letter Y in English. That's pretty funny. See, graveyard spelled with two L's. All right, which letter makes the G sound in egeneto? That second, that consonant right there. What consonant is that? What letter is that? It's not a Y. Don't write the Y. That's not right. What letter is that? What's the name of that Greek letter? What's the name of that Greek letter? Alpha, beta, what's the next letter? Gamma. Good, that's a gamma. That's, again, what I said a couple meetings ago or last week when we had our first meeting was when you get started in Greek, the letters you especially have to watch out for are the ones that look like English letters, but they're not the same letter, okay? So that's one of the ones you need to look out for. It looks like a Y. It looks like a Y, but it's not. It's a gamma. It's like a G, okay? Egeneto, egeneto. You see that now? Egeneto, egeneto. Good, okay? Egeneto. Panta diautu egeneto. So this means all things, panta. Dia, what does dia mean? What does dia mean? Come on, wake up and help me out here. Dia, through. Good. Dia means through. What does autu mean? What does autu mean? Him. All right, here's a Latin challenge for you. Here's a Latin challenge. In Greek, we have diautu. What's the Latin phrase that Saint Jerome used to translate diautu? Think. Don't type before you think. Think. What's the Latin phrase for diautu? Per ipsum. Very good. Per ipsum. Giovanni took a guess. Per ipsum is the right answer. Okay. Now, if you're studying Latin reading, you can use your Latin reading to help you understand the Greek reading, because what's cool about Latin reading is that you actually have Saint Jerome's translation of this Greek text. So when Saint Jerome looked at this Greek text and thought of how it should be translated into Latin, you read that in the Vulgate. So it's actually like a commentary on the Greek, because you can see how Saint Jerome, who was a language master, understood the meaning of the Greek text, okay? All right, so good. So we've we're working on some pronunciation. It looks like everyone is kind of at that point where you're either just getting started to study the Greek pronunciation and reading, or you're comfortable, but there's still a few points here and there that you get tripped up on. So that's good. That's what I want to be able to help you with. What I want you to remember is you have to be working in the Greek reading course. You have to be working individually in the Greek reading course, or these classes are going to be useless. Because what's going to happen is we're going to move on, and the students who are getting their work done in Greek reading will be able to move on with me. And if you're not moving on in Greek reading, you're still going to be asking the same questions 65 years from now that you should have already answered in the first or second lesson. Zoriana, you can add the course at any time. I think you just use the enrollment key. You can do that yourself. You can add courses yourself. We don't have like a magic button here on my desk that we press. You can just add the course. Okay? So we're through verse 3 there. We're running out of time, so we're going to stop there for today. I want to spend just give me 3 minutes here. All right, 3 minutes, and I want to show you the vocabulary course. So just follow me here. If you look on the course page, you're all welcome to start this. If you look on the course page down right here, TRV 210, there's a new course on the list. TRV 210 is Greek vocabulary. It's open for enrollment. You can use an enrollment key to get in it. There's only one lesson posted so far. I'm going to try to post one lesson each week. If you want to study Greek vocabulary, this is how you can do it. So let's take a look at the lesson. Here's the lesson here. So what you see for the lesson, there's a topic for each lesson. Lesson 1 is on heaven. You see there's a list of Greek vocabulary. So obviously the first thing you need to do is practice reading these words. One way to practice reading is to transliterate them, to write the Greek letters into English letters. 210 is just the course number. No secret meaning, not like some secret mysterious number message in there. It's just a course number. It means I don't recommend it for beginning students, like 100 level students. I would like them to take Latin studies, Latin vocabulary first. If they're going to take vocabulary, I'd like to save Greek vocabulary for a little older student or more advanced student. You guys, most of you are welcome to do it though. 300 is high school level, yeah, okay? So you've got the Greek word in bold print. That's the noun that you'll find in the dictionary. So you've got to read that. Then you've got the genitive form of that noun, which really isn't important for you when you're just learning vocabulary, but may be important later when you're getting into translation and stuff like that. You're also told the gender of that noun, again, which you don't need to know for vocabulary. All you need to know is the noun, the name of the word. Then you've got the English meaning of that word, and you can see I've made the English meanings very simple, so it's very easy to study and enter into a quiz, okay? You've got the English meaning, and then you've got the Latin word that's equivalent to that Greek word, okay? So Greek vocabulary is open. Lesson 1 is available. You can see Giovanni asked before about symbols that I talked about. Those symbols were in the Greek vocabulary book, which there's no way that you can possibly read. So I've typed the words out for you nice and clearly, so they're easy to read and study. So as long as you can read the language, you can get started in Greek vocabulary. So that's the list you'll get. They're in Google Docs because I have to have access to the Greek letters and symbols, so I can't like type it on a web page. I've got to use a Google Doc. And then there's a quiz. So there's a quiz waiting for you already. Oh, actually, it says I didn't add the questions yet, but I did make the quiz. I just have to upload the questions. I'll do that as soon as we're done here. So first lesson, and I'll have the first quiz posted in just a minute after we're done, but that's ready to study. You can enroll in that and study yourself. Okay, so Lara, if you look at the title of the lesson, it's the heavens, right? It's on the heavens. The names of the Greek gods are in this lesson because they're the names of the planets, okay? So it's actually the names of the planets. Okay? You can see their English meanings here. It's because we're studying the heavens in lesson 1. All right, so that's it. 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. That's all that I wanted to share with you today. Seems like you're doing pretty well, so that's good. If you are just getting started, don't think there's something wrong with you. If who was it before? Said they felt lost. Let's see who was that. I know the last name was Schmidt, but I don't remember the first name. But if you feel lost, don't think there's something wrong with you. Some of these students have been studying Greek reading for some time now. There are videos on the Greek reading course at the beginning of the course that teach you all of the letters and the sounds and how to read. So you need to study those videos. They're waiting for you. You can study those on your own. It's not like the kids in this meeting woke up this morning and had this stuff revealed to them. They've been studying for a while, so don't think that something's wrong with you. Ruth, okay. Thank you. So just stick with us and feel free to ask questions, and we'll work through this together week by week, okay? So that's all for today. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions about Greek studies and want to hang around a bit, I'm happy to hang around and answer them. But if you are ready to go, you're free to go now. Okay, I'll stop the recording and then we'll just chat for some time afterwards. Thank you guys for coming.